Hey, what's up guys, I'm Joe and this is the step-by-step process on how to install a steel fence. Alright, today we're here at my mill on site at a steel fence we just finished. We're going to go through the 4 main components of installing a steel fence, which is planning, post setting, fence sections, and gates. So let's go check it out. Okay, so with planning, first you've got to determine where you want the fence to go, and that could involve how much space you want to fence in, what you're doing with the fence, with containing pets or children or whatever, privacy, all those aspects of what goes into where your fence goes. So you may need to involve getting to know where your property pins, the property lines are. You're going to have to call 811 to get utilities marked and then get your material here on site. So as we were planning, we did all those steps, worked through all that with this particular homeowner, and then before we got started, we walked through with them to confirm everything was the way they wanted it. So you can even see some of our white marks here that we determined, hey, we want to come off the house here and come down. So with that, once the plan is in place, then for us to get started, we will first, with that plan and with those locations, we will use our stakes and string line, and we'll string all this out. So we'll run string line all along each of these lines. So you can see this came out from the house, across the back up over there, and then back returned to the house. So the very first thing we did when we get on site is to run our string lines, and that involves stakes and strings. So then that's kind of our first step. That's kind of the midway step between the planning and post setting, because then we get right into the post setting. The first thing you're going to do is plan out your post spacing. So this particular fence is an Ameristar ornamental steel fence. We've talked a little bit about that. Ameristar is locally made in Tulsa. They have a great reputation, have an incredible powder coat and just quality of product. So you do want to consider that when you're choosing your material. There are some different import steel products that are lesser quality, have lesser quality paint and paint finishes. So you want to consider all those things with the quality and selection of your material. But with this particular fence section, the sections themselves are 94 inches. And the way that these brackets are, so you can see the panel itself is 94. Then the brackets have a little bit of variance, but they're designed to have roughly a 1/4 inch space at this post and a 1/4 inch space at this post. So that all backs into how you want to set your post. You can see there you've got 1/4, 3/8, just under a half, but you'll take all that into consideration. So you'll want to consider the width of your panel and then what spacing you need for any hardware or brackets. With this setup, we want to set our post at 94.5 inches, or at max 94.75. So what that looks like is, knowing that, we know from inside of one post to the inside of this post, we need to be at 94.5 inches. These particular posts are 2-inch posts. So in our process, we'll typically mark center to center. So if you do 94.5 plus the 2-inch post, that's 96.5 from the center of one post to the center of the next post. So we then proceed by marking each post location, and we're marking with white paint the center of that post. So we'll start wherever we start and measure out 96.5, make a white mark, 96.5, make a white mark, 96.5, make a white mark. And then once we've got everything strung up, all our posts marked off, that's when we'll start digging our posts. Once we've dug all our posts, we'll go through and dig all our posts to the proper depth. On this particular fence, you're looking at about 16 to 18 inches deep for your hole, and that varies depending on the type of fence you're doing and the height of it. And so once we've got all that, we'll put our post in, we'll level it up on the string line, and we'll pour our concrete to set our post. So at that point, we'll let the concrete set up. We'll usually give it at least a day to set up, and then we'll return to put our sections in. So then as we transition to installing the sections, we've got our post in, the concrete is cured, and if we've done our job properly, we've set all our posts at the correct spacing. So another note on that, we actually cut boards at that 94.5 inches to use as a jig. So say we set this post, then we'll set our jig in there to get us an exact 94.5 inches before we set this next post. So with that, assuming we've got our post all in the right place and spaced correctly, then that makes the panel or fence section install very easy. With these bracket systems, we'll figure out how far we want to be off the ground. We'll take a measurement of how tall the panel is. So in this case, it's 46 inches. And then we can run a top string and then check our heights off the ground to keep it where we want to be. And then from that top line, we can mount our brackets, which these brackets they just bolt on. So once you got your positioning and your top line, you can bolt on your brackets, and then you just work your way down the line. You bolt in your brackets, and then you make any adjustments. If you have any shorter sections where you had to cut, you'll cut the section and drill for your brackets and bolt that in. And then yeah, so that's a pretty easy process of installing your sections, bolting them in, getting it in position, making any minor adjustments up and down to make sure it flows really well, and then tightening those bolts and getting it in final location. Then once you got that in place, these posts some of them will be of varying heights. So once we've got the top of our panels set at the right height, then we'll come back and we'll measure up a couple inches, cut all these posts uniform at a couple inches above the fence, and then put the cap on, and then you've got your fence sections and fence portion all in place. All right, so fourth and last point would be your gates, which, circling back to the planning part, you want to plan your gates according to, hey, do I need to get a lawnmower back here? Do I need to pull a truck or trailer back here? You know, what kind of access do you need to get into the fenced in area? So you can see here, we did a 5-foot gate, and that's a good gate to get most mowers through and have good access. It's a little bit wider than a typical 4-foot walk gate, good for lawn mowers and just a little bit extra room. And then as you see on here, we've got a slope. So when we set these posts, we took an exact measurement of the inside to inside of the post, but we also used a level to see how much the ground sloped right there. And then when we took those two pieces of information, the measurement inside to inside of the post, and then the amount of fall here, and then we made this gate accordingly to accommodate that slope or that fall. So that's something you want to consider when you're choosing the placement of your gates and you're fabricating and installing your gates. You know, choose your hardware. This is a typical pin hinge. You can do self-closing hinges that are spring-loaded to close back. If you do that, this is a normal like fork latch. You can lock it here. You can do other lockable latches and pull safety latches depending on your situation. So you need to choose your hinges and your latches and hardware and install those along with your gate. All right, so on this one we had another walk gate. This is a 4-foot gate. Now in this particular scenario, they didn't want to go too far out from the house on this fence line in order to preserve some of this side yard. So we did this where we had a post, but we've had the concrete footing or foundation, especially by this corner, that we couldn't dig down very far and set a post, but we needed a post to support this gate. So we fabricated a post with some extensions, and we've got it in the ground as deep as we could, plus tied back to the brick here. But that gives us a good solid sturdy post to be able to hang our gate. Because another thing is, you may ask, well, why didn't you just hang it from the corner? Which on a gate of this size, you probably could have, but we try to not do that as much as possible, because even though we've set this post in concrete and it's solid, there's no adjacent fence to support that gate hanging. And so those posts can flex a little bit, and it's just not as great a support for hanging a gate off of the corner. So we prefer to either have a little bit of fence in line with our hinge post, or something like this where it's tied back to the house. So that's why we elected to do this post here with the extensions and hang it this way. And then you see it swings back this way. But just an example of a gate setup and how you may want to plan and install a gate on your project. So if you're curious about the process for your steel fence install, or you're planning a DIY project, these are the 4 steps for a successful ornamental steel fence install. It's planning, post setting, fence sections, and gates. So I hope that's helpful and gives you an inside look on what it takes to get a steel fence at your house. Make sure and like this video, it helps out a ton, and subscribe to the channel for more fences just like this.